what we'll be talking today about. We'll talk about Agile. Some people actually claim that Agile is dead. What's my opinion? You'll see during the talk. We also will be talking about expectations and how we can meet those expectations. And how sometimes we miscommunicate or misuse the word Agile in our world. Who I am, my name is Kasia Mrowca, and I'll be your host today. As I said, Agile management anti-patterns. So first of all, we can actually even think if something like Agile management actually exists. When I was preparing to this talk, I was Googling and finding, really interesting certificates, even in Agile management. Even from institutions that usually are really preaching kind of waterfall approach, they suddenly having certifications in Agile, which sounds a bit odd. Then you just open the book, start reading about this Agile thing and just considering, oh, we have deadlines, we have timelines, we have project plan, which actually looks like Gantt chart. Okay, interesting. So that's why we'll just go a bit deeper and try to figure it out if actually Agile is a thing, if the stuff that we call Agile actually means anything. Because the true trouble with this beautiful word is that it's fashionable. Because it's fashionable, we just use it everywhere. It's a bit like, in technology, microservices everywhere, containers everywhere. The same as with trying to run our projects. We basically everyone is Agile, right? If you are not Agile, our customers are concerned because we are not, up to date with the newest trends, and probably we don't know our job. And another question is if we actually need to be Agile in order to deliver value to our customers, and how we can actually manage it. Okay, that's it for the brief introduction. Who I am. So I'm Kasia, as I said you before. I have Twitter. How many of you guys use Twitter? Okay, a few of you. So feel free to tweet. Feel free to follow me. I'm part of the Agile in Europe community, and probably if you will be listening to this talk, you can maybe doubt if I actually even like Agile. I was co-organizer back home of the meetup called Agile in Europe Enthusiasts, and also I was co-organizer of conference Agile in Europe. What else? I'm also working, not only on the conference, usual job, and I'm a consultant. So during this talk, you'll hear "it depends" really frequently. Why? Because also I would like to give you a bit of a context, because context is the king. Everything beautifully works in theory. In practice, sometimes it simply fails because context don't match. And there is no gold rule that we can just follow and apply in our company and it will be just working. And a bit about my background. I started working in an internal IT department, then I switched to the software house, then I switched again and was working for the software vendor, then switched again, and now I'm working in a consulting company. So I had a really broad perspective how our IT industry is working. I also was helping with few startups, trying to figure out how to make requirements and all those weird stuff connected with, magical scope working. So I have kind of broad perspective, and during this, I will try to actually present those perspectives to you. So as we actually started talking at the beginning, how about this Agile thing? Is it good or bad? So this is screen, and I won't put it on the during my talk, from the really good TED talk about synthesizing happiness. So basically, this is the theory that says that even if we are thrown to the jail and after 20 years we are released and someone asks us, how it was, the person probably say, okay, it was the best time of my life. And you think, oh my God, you were in jail and probably by mistake, and how come? Kind of similar thing is happening with Agile. We are working in some manner, then someone just tell us, okay, we need to be Agile. We just rename our processes, and then everyone is really happy, even though we still have magical word process. And even before I move forward, how many of you knows Agile Manifesto? Okay, And there's anyone willing to say it loud? Okay, so that we'll move to this as well. But there is like one kind of thing that Agile as a philosophy says that we actually shouldn't be that much focused on the processes, but we'll go to this part as well. So companies try to force to be Agile even if it's not suit. Now you can ask, okay, how come that Agile cannot suit to certain companies? Simply because of external constraints that companies has. For instance, finance institutions frequently are really heavily obliged to basically produce project plans, budgets, and other stuff because of registration and because of security reasons. And sometimes having flexible scope and approach like, okay, let's plan it like 2 weeks ahead, it simply cannot work there due to external constraints. There are some companies that basically are really big and have troubles with scaling, and they try use Agile. They use something similar to Agile, but then it ends up again in having something that actually looks like baby waterfall with small iterations, but still we have huge Gantt chart with dependencies and releases. And again, if we have really huge complicated project and we have dependencies and we know that our module needs to talk with module X, Z, and Y, and we need to produce API in certain order in order to actually connect those, it creates dependencies, right? So it reduces our flexibility. We'll talk about it. Okay, and now let's see, okay, can we actually connect like this traditional approach to like project management in like PMI sense or Prince2 sense with Agile principles? Some people think we can, so just take Gantt chart and say that we are working in Agile, maybe rename a few stuff, and then beautifully we have Agile project management as a thing, and we can have certificates in that as well. Now the question is, okay, how this can help us? Probably sometimes if we at least improve our processes a bit, it helps, but usually it just creates additional overhead. Everyone are frustrated because now we are working in Agile, so instead of having only project manager, we also have Scrum Master. Scrum Master is getting miserable because project manager actually doesn't listen to him and says, oh no, you know, I know that you have those story points, but I as a project manager need deadlines. So you know, I just took them, put them to the spreadsheet and here are your deadlines. Carry on with your work. Sometimes, if you are lucky, project manager and Scrum Master is one person, and then he is forced by external evil powers to produce the deadlines, and then suddenly we have commitments that shouldn't be in that manner produced in Agile. Because the whole theory is we are flexible, we are delivering value, we are talking with our customers, and our customers know that if we change scope, it's because you know, environment around us is changing and we want to do our best to deliver true, good working software to customers. Unfortunately, in this approach, we just renaming stuff. We are doing our old, beautiful waterfall with actually lying to ourselves that we have Agile. So just to sum up this part, I want to say that Agile is a kind of philosophy. There is no ready recipe. And, you know, some people say, okay, Scrum equals Agile. Not necessarily. You can have Scrum framework, and you can try really, really hard, but if you in your company are people who really are focused on like waterfall manner of working, you will just rename your processes. Some things in Scrum are really, really valuable, like retrospectives. If you are, you know, if you are in a point that you can actually complain and improve, then you have at least some value added. But in some companies, believe me, you have only the stand-ups and iterations. That's it. Maybe you have planning because you need to give us the estimates that we can produce the deadlines, right? So planning is important. Other than that, it's getting tricky. Okay, I asked you about Agile Manifesto, so let's go through this. Process over tours. So that's usually in our companies. Someone decides to have Agile, and what they are saying, okay, If we'll just change our waterfall to Scrum, everything will magically work, right? We just rename the way that we are working. We maybe, if we are lucky, someone will employ Agile coach. If we are not lucky, someone just gives us a book and say, okay, just read the Scrum book, everything will be fine. Is it fine in the end? Well, depends of the people. Sometimes if we have good people and we can like adjust and we are small, we can be good. But what will happen if we are in the big company that we have actually troubles with communication, so interactions, and individual is just, we are somewhere small in the bottom of the hierarchy. Then we suddenly have like beautiful process, and Scrum, instead of having like, certainly it helps. I don't want to criticize it because it's like the first step. But sometimes it's the first and last step and people even don't try to like move forward from it. And what we have process. And guess what? Also the most frequent stuff when people want to improve is, okay, let's change the tool. Because it's not our problem, it's the tool problem, right? Whatever is happening, it's fault of the tool. Jira is not flexible enough, version 1 is not flexible enough. Let's turn back to the beautiful Excel spreadsheet because in Excel everything worked. And you can easier do the project plans and switch the calculate story points to deadlines, right? So sometimes our approach is actually reversal from spreadsheet. We are just buying the tool and saying now we are Agile because we have Jira Agile, or now we are Agile because we bought version 1. It's expensive, so basically it means that we invest in our people and everyone should be happy. That's first step. Sometimes if it leads to other steps, it's good. But if we just stop over here, it starts to be again tricky because instead of improving situation, we are just accepting what we have and building tools on top of it. In actually building software for our customers, sometimes we actually do the same thing. We just take existing process without thinking and developing it in the tool, and then we are surprised that it's not working. So similar things, unfortunately. Another thing is documentation. And I'm not saying that documentation is not important, because especially if we have really old tool, and then suddenly we need to make change, we just start thinking, okay, what it was actually doing, this module, right? If anyone actually remembers? But the trouble is that 1 hour after writing documentation is like outdated. So what we can do? Well, I would advise, instead of having like pile of documentation, trying to make it like visual and trying to have automated tests. This is like obvious thing that I assume that everyone knows right now. If not, there's plenty of talk even here about automated tests. But this is something that gives us predictability. If we add something, we don't break another thing. Sometimes tests also are cheating, but let's say that it's easier than reading through 1,000 pages of documentation. Again, in corporate world, to basically convince people to actually use, instead of comprehensive documentation or diagrams or anything else, tests to check if everything's working and basically have the test written in a manner that business people can read it. So for instance, in Cucumber or other framework like that. It's kind of hard because it's something that looks really technical, even if it's approachable. Next thing, collaboration. That's actually my favorite because we think that collaboration and talking with customers is so easy, right? But then we just end up with, let's say, having like Google Docs or spreadsheets or SharePoints that we don't read, or even the worst case scenario, we have like development team. We have product owner, maybe like a bunch of BAs in between product owner and development team. Then we have salesperson, then we have marketing person, and then we have the poor customer in the end. And we have this whole chain of people that basically are talking with customer, but not necessarily developers. Some people prefer that because not everyone feels comfortable talking, but what that basically means that as a development team, not necessarily we understand what our customer, how the person works, how the business works, and how we can make it better. And the whole idea around Agile actually was that we as an industry start to understand the business and can propose solutions that merge business and technology approach. Again, it's not easy if we have like really huge product, but during my talk later on in the second part, I will try to answer this particular thing and basically help for this, because I really strongly believe that if we understand what we're doing, we are just doing it better. Again, responding to change over following the plan. I think that's, all those Gantt things that I told you. Why it's actually dangerous? Because some people say, okay, we need planning just because it's easier to have a vision. I have nothing against vision, it's really important. But having detailed plan reduces flexibility. So if we have banking app, right, with the queue for 5 years ahead, and then suddenly Apple introduced fingerprint login, and our competitors from like startups and kind of finance-y kind of apps introduce nice feature of fingerprint login to our app and give us really secure and easy access to our money, we will switch. Personally, I switched my bank because the new one had fingerprint and all still don't have, even though it's like 2 years old right now. So customers are doing things like that, and especially if our products are not outstanding. Usually in the business spectrum, it's really hard to innovate. That's why we have like Uber, Airbnb, Spotify, and all other things like that actually brings technology into landscape and make ordinary business outstanding. So that's why having plans few years ahead won't work. We are not allowing ourselves enough flexibility to react of the stuff that's happening on the market. We don't allow ourselves to innovate. Okay, quickly, like wrapping up this part, why actually, companies having troubles with introducing Agile. First of all, this kind of thinking, if we buy a tool, we'll be fine because we suddenly are becoming more flexible and more agile. Then we struggle to basically see bigger picture because we have this 2 years backlog ahead and we just don't see how our environment around is changing and how technology influence our business. Then we have this chain I was talking about, and we have troubles because everyone communicates via proxies, so we also lose the ability of seeing and being able to propose any new changes. Again, we sometimes also fail in the terms that we just try to do everything at once. If we have like small baby steps, it's just easier. Again, because people don't like changes. In IT, we are, here listening about great innovative stuff during the, whole the conference. I attend few business conferences. They are listening about similar stuff, but basically there is like no bridge because we are focused in our industries. Stuff like Agile is supposed to be a bridge, but it's actually not. And a lot of people just from business side are just not aware. Not because they don't want to listen or basically they are stubborn. It's like the content is not somehow getting there. So after this talk, I just encourage, talk with your business people, maybe show the YouTube videos and encourage them to actually learn because that's beneficial for two sides. Okay, so what are other common themes? Right now we'll just talk through the examples how companies are trying to introduce changes and basically how we can make it happen, because sometimes we are just doing the first step, right? Because we had like usual waterfall and we thought, okay, we really want to have Agile. We know how Agile looks like, so it should be simple, right? Instead of having this beautiful steps over here, we just wrap it and basically it will be like working perfectly. So let's start from iterations because it's easy, right? Let's just give our scope like in business requirements documents, in do like discovery phase, then let's design it, everything, mock-ups and stuff. And then let's allow, work in Agile, our development team. And what we suddenly discovered that here we don't have feedback loop. Maybe if we are happy, actually test is like done parallel to development. Sometimes actually we are like developing, then we have sprint of testing, then we are developing, sprint of testing. But this is the kind of the first step. And then basically we start calling it Agile because we have iterations, right? We probably have Scrum. Maybe in the process we have like retrospectives in the end. We have obviously stand-ups. I'm totally certain that we have like user stories and backlog. So we have all the artifacts that makes us kind of Agile. So what this actually is in practice. If you see the important thing, so time to market, it's still long. And people at this point just forget that making it iterative, there was like several in the software development lifecycle approaches. There was like several ideas. One of them was like iterative model, which basically has like this kind of time to market. So we were doing iterations, but not necessarily checking the results and deploying earlier. So this is not necessarily Agile, and iterations are not necessarily Agile as well. Why? Because we don't have flexibility. We are not testing our ideas. We are not really flexible because if our design and discovery was over here, then making any changes in an iterative manner is difficult, and sometimes we even not think about making any changes, to be honest. So again, comparing the two, all the thing connected with having those iterations is to like test our ideas and having shorter time to market. There are companies that are really aggressive in terms of time to market. By really aggressive, I say, let's deploy after a year. No, you can't test ideas. If you have a development team working for a year and then you start thinking about deploying, it's a bit too late. If you are really scared, because there are big companies that are scared of putting the products that are not perfect to the market. Maybe we can have beta group somewhere of our trusted customers and we can actually deploy it and see how it's working. Why this is also important factor. In one of the companies I worked in, and when I got employed, I was told, okay, we are doing brand new product. It will be great. Just join our team. We are starting from scratch. I arrived. It was 5 years old software with no customer. And was still under development. And it wasn't a small project. It was at that time written by 4 development teams. We had the support of like full one testers team. And obviously we're working in Agile. The trouble was gold plating. We haven't been testing our ideas, but our product owners were not happy and they were like constantly redoing the same functionality, even without testing it to the customers. So that was the trouble. We couldn't finish because we weren't actually validating our ideas. And why it's dangerous? Because we are wasting money. If we're a big company, maybe we can afford this. But if we are small, we simply can't. Maybe that's why small companies are having like easier in order to basically approach this, because they have to, because otherwise they won't survive. So as I said, feedback at from this point is like really, really hard to get. Another thing is, okay, how plan this thing, right? Because if we have iterations and if we are trying to be flexible, it's really hard to plan. And what we basically are used to have is like roadmap and roadmap commitments, right? Because if we put anything in a line, like any ideas, any vision, there will be someone in our company that put dates on it. And then, especially if we are working on the systems that are like heavily distributed, or we have like APIs or other basically things, and we plan to like have new brilliant API and to communicate with our product, and we just put it down somewhere on a paper in a linear manner, someone will sell it to the customer and then they will expect to have it delivered. So this is another thing I will talk about, how to make it like easier in order to still have a vision, but not necessarily in a linear manner in a minute. Next thing is size of a backlog. Again, sometimes when I join companies, what I'm given, like a single person responsible for a product, saying, okay, this is 1,523 user stories. Deal with it. Guess what? It's too many. And if you have that size of a backlog, instead of one person, you need an army. And I'm not against product people. I'm a product person. But if we try to be good at communicating and good at delivering our products, and we have basically this in our backlog, we have no clue what is there. Even if we have army, because we need to communicate, and we have really a lot of waste. Why? Because just imagine everything is detailed, everything was estimated, every single acceptance criteria is written down, and then suddenly some Apple gives this fingerprint thingy, and it's all our plans connected with logging is destroyed, right? Because our customers, I don't know why instead of typing password they just won't have like fingerprint. Disappointing. But basically this is what's happening with the requirements during the time. They just lose the value. So having them really detailed, it's just waste. We'll talk about it because why this actually happens, right? There is kind of feature gluttony driven by our users. I had this talk about this particular topic here on the conference. So if you haven't seen it, recommend the video. So what is happening in reality? If we are starting developing our products, there are a few points when our users are, here they can't actually use the application, but it's basically good enough for having tests and test some assumption. There is a point that they are actually see the value added. And this is the point when, if we have marketing, you can say, oh, actually, you can sell it. Because someone see that the business process and the key value that the business user would like to do is delivered, so it's helping, right? It's helping our user. There is also a point where the users actually have everything they should have in order to do their work. But it doesn't mean that they will stop asking. They will ask for more and more features. Why? Because once they see that their life can be simplified, they would like to continue this path. And not necessarily they understand about stuff like modules or like splitting the application for two, because maybe instead of having one huge, heavy monster, we can have 2 modules or 3 modules. They see their world in a way that it's basically, it's my work and I would like to have it done in one application, right? I don't want to switch because it's easier for me to have it at one. So we get the requirements to add like small one feature to our application. And then suddenly from small features that initially, okay, one, it's fine, we have like loads of things that we added and we just lose the bigger picture. And this is actually dangerous because then instead of having like, clear view of what our app is doing, we have something like that. One of my favorite example was, okay, maybe I before ask, anyone from Microsoft in this room? No hands? Okay. Basically, they have I really like Microsoft Outlook. It's like good for emails. Definitely better than some other products. Maybe I won't give the names. But then the Microsoft also had some time ago tool called Microsoft Link. It was a communicator. I think right now it's replaced by Skype. But still, some companies are using Link. And there was an idea about showing the calendar in Link. Nice to have, I would say, in terms of the features. So what this basically did to Outlook itself, once you are putting the meeting invite, instead of taking like few milliseconds as it used to be, it took like few seconds. Why? Because it was synchronizing with Link. And this was the idea that maybe it's like nice to have for like a few people, but what it happened, the core functionality of Outlook was actually interrupted because what people are doing, they are scheduling meetings in Outlook, they are sending emails, and this is what they want to do, not necessarily, having the synchronization happening. So this was the kind of thing that basically interrupts really heavily the core business process of our application without adding huge value to the customers. And I'm certain that someone asked them to do it because the idea of, seeing your meetings in Link, it's good, right? but it's not crucial. So sometimes we need to ask ourselves if the things that we are asked are really worthly implementing. Again, this is, one of the things that sometimes happens. So basically, we ask what is missing, right? And we have this kind of cycle. So sometimes we need to basically validate. And what is happening? Our partners from product side usually put all those things to backlog because they're simply terrified to say to the customer or to the users or to anyone who requests the features, sorry, we won't do it. So we put it to the backlog, which sometimes write the data requirements, and sometimes we forget. So if we really need to do it, keep it separate. So have a working queue backlog and maybe parking lot, and name it parking lot, because otherwise we are just lost. Again, easy to use if we have a lot of features? Not really. This is sometimes also one of the requirements if we just put a lot of things into our backlog, and by the way, it's going to be easy to use. And the requirements itself and basically the clarity, it's also another question, right? Because if we have this complexity and we just add to our backlog more and more items, the quality actually decreases. And this is actually a real user story I saw. And why not just write login? Probably it would be even better, but people, just try to force yourselves to fit to the schemas and to the structure and basically force everyone to use it. Okay, I just need to be mindful of time. We have still a bit, that's good. So schemas itself can help us to basically build the understanding, but the whole idea about this is basically driving some value. So if you see something like that and ask yourself if it's giving a value, and the answer is no, get rid of it. If you can't use the schema and it doesn't help you, just write login, because maybe it's more meaningful and it's less reading and you just can easier to manage your tickets because you see. The idea here is basically presenting the business value as well, and the outcome, but in this, it's just not visible. Okay, another thing is, are we done with our user stories? And basically how to assess if we are working in this steps manner, if we are deliver the value or not. And maybe we actually didn't deliver anything. If we don't have feedback loop, it's really hard to have definition of them straight. Few people are laughing, I think experience from real life. Yes. So why it's happening? This is usually, we are, as a development team, are working, testing team is working, and then we have the business and demos that sometimes don't happening. No one is validating, and we have a lot of troubles with actually signing off or saying, oh yeah, we just delivered our backlog item and we are happy with it. Especially in the environment that when we don't have we can't deploy, we just can't have continuous delivery and just deploy to the customer, and if the customer is actually yelling at us, it means that it's not done. So then we have a lot of things that are pending, and then suddenly in the end, after a year of development, someone look at it and say, oh, actually I didn't mean that. And we are in big troubles. Again, why it's happening? Because the projects are big and because we are not willing to have smaller steps. Why? Because we are also terrified. So if you will be having the conversation with business people, how we can actually tackle this? I just advise to pull the statistics. There's a report done by Standish Group. This one is from 2012, but I think that the last year, in 2015, they did similar research, and outcomes was really, really similar. What is basically presenting? Big projects over here, small projects over here. By small, I mean one team. By big one, I mean several people, 1 million plus budget, taking few years. So what's the trouble with this is basically by failure we don't deliver to the production at all. By this blue thing, so by changes, we change the scope, we change the budget, we change the timeline, we change one of these three, or we change everything, but in the end, someone is using it. Green, everything within time and scope. It can happen, as you can see. There are this is the proof for miracles, or that the statistic is lying. Who knows? But what happens if we have smaller projects? It's basically easier to succeed. Why? Because our scope is smaller, so we can understand it. In the big vision, which is also probably not, people think that it's really well defined, but in practice, we just figured out that we have few roadblocks that we haven't thought about before. And some people say, oh, no, big projects are all, constructions of the roads and buildings. But guess what? Constructions of the roads sometimes are delayed as well. I'm from Poland, and our road constructions never, ever finish on time. Never, ever finished within time and budget. So when someone talks that the IT industry should, follow the path of the, constructions of the road, I think that definitely it follows the Polish way. I'm not saying that's the best. Yeah.
So what does changes mean?
By change, I mean we change the scope, we change the budget, or we change the timeline. So one of the three change, or all of them. This, if you're interested in details, the Standish group break it down to smaller bits. But usually, when you start conversation with people who don't want to listen about having small baby steps and actually testing the ideas in the market, this helps to understand that this is risk, and business people understand risk. This it's reducing risk to 4% is relatively small. Still, we can fail. Actually, what basically it also says. We are not really willing to accept our failure. Even if our ideas are terrible, we just go with them. And with big projects, we just carry for years with them. In smaller ones, we can still have some changes. And maybe if our idea is really bad, we can just kill it really, really quickly. So actually, we can pretend that we even didn't have this idea. So it's more smoother in that perspective. Again, statistically, me and my dog, we have 3 legs. So just be mindful that in your context of your company, maybe your big project is working brilliantly, and this is just, you are in this 10%, right? You are in this miracle. But there is plenty of places that it actually doesn't work. Okay, before we just go to the recipes, really quickly wrapping up, this is good first step, but please don't stop there, unless you really can't go anywhere else because of the constraints of the companies. And again, if you can't, just admit, okay, instead of trying to pretend, let's figure out how we can improve our process instead of forcing Scrum and instead of forcing Scrum practices, because maybe stand-ups are not working for us. Maybe actually having a backlog is not working for us, and it would be easier to have a BRD with nice diagrams and stated what we need to do within our 5 years project plan. So those are the things that we need to be mindful about. If we have the product roadmaps, also commitment, it's not having good level of flexibility for ourselves. Then we have growing backlog, and then we have the troubles because users always will want more. It's just the thing. And the quality of the user stories itself, it's basically challenging. Okay, and you can ask, okay, is it basically any hope that from this huge process, we just go to this one? So one of the things that I'm usually proposing is starting from vision and having a roadmap in a manner that it's not linear. Why? Because everyone then is happy that their idea is captured. It's high level, so it's not detailed, so we are not wasting time. And we can have something which is product tree. We can use mind map if we are a distributed team. If we are not, we can use it in with the sticky notes. What basically is doing really quickly, this is the current time box, whatever it is. It could be 2 weeks. If we are working in sprints, it could be a sprint. If we are working in Kanban, when we decided that our time box is 3 months, it could be 3 months. Whatever it is, we are just taking those ideas and trying to figure out them. And those all are basically future. Also, they are structured in a modular manner. Those branches are kind of modules. And because when we show it to the business and when we talk with the business in this manner, they see the branches are not merging like normally, right? So it's really not allowing to have dependencies. And as we know, if we have a lot of dependencies between modules, it's really hard to maintain. And then if we want to split two modules to two separate applications and we have dependencies, it's just another complexity to manage. But this is not the end. Those are the ideas, and some of them maybe are not the best one. So we need to assess how to have the best ideas actually developed, at least mentally. Because if we are like agreeing that, okay, we have like huge timeline and we have a lot of requirements, let's try to assess at least briefly if the idea is good or not. We are taking the leaves with the ideas which are not yet detailed. We are checking against ROI, and we are checking against one feature that we consider as the key. If we having, for instance, booking engine for airlines, and we want to retrieve price really quickly because our customers are not willing to wait, because if they wait, they will go to another booking engine, this performance is the key. So adding the feature that actually slow us down, and at least I think that it will slow us down, it's actually not really good. So we try to assess this. Once we assess it, guess what we have? MVP can be like for products that we already have and we are just want to add them on top of them. Can be used as well for the new products. One important thing is use the common sense, because maybe somewhere here it's like security requirement. And if we don't do it, we are screwed. So just assess if maybe, our greediness is like, not taking the important factor into consideration, because maybe it's really, really, really important. If you are interested in the details how to make it working, the talk called Feature Gluttony actually talks in detailed manner about the product tree and how to go with really huge number of ideas to smaller number and how to detail them in a manner that actually is meaningful. Because this is like the first step of reducing number of things that we want and we are actually delivering. And it's then easier to test our assumption based on this. Okay, what are the other scenes that I would like to briefly talk about? Because I see that I have 15 minutes and I guess that we need to also sometimes for questions. Well, we are asked about estimates. So some of us have like beautiful crystal ball and can estimate things really accurately. Personally, I haven't seen good estimates. There are teams who are like during work getting more and more accurate, but then suddenly we have the roadblock connected with technology or maybe requirements change or simply dependencies from the other app, and we can't deliver, even though in theory we could develop in a certain pace, but we need to integrate with system A, B, and C, and they didn't deliver the APIs. So even though we are ready to consume it, we have no chance because they weren't ready, and we can't forecast stuff like that. So basically, what is happening when we are asked for the estimates? And basically, we are having the project plans, right? So again, we have the magical spreadsheets with translating whatever we give, even if there's a t-shirt sizes. T-shirt sizes also can be mapped to the numbers. Whatever we are giving, it's basically translated. Is it wrong or bad? Again, if we just try to communicate that, okay, we are giving these numbers and we know that this basically it's kind of, math even proves that it's just guessing. It's just rough idea and maybe not be even like connected, and I'm just giving you because you as a business need to have some predictability, then maybe it's fine. But what we are failing to communicate that actually it's not an estimate, it's guess. And instead of giving the predictability to the business, we are just giving this guess, and they really honestly believe us. They believe that this is the time. We believe that this is the time, and then something happens and everyone is frustrated. And I know that in the corporate environment, sometimes, or actually really frequently, it's not possible to live without deadlines. It's just how the world works. We at least can try to communicate, okay, let's add a buffer. because we can't predict everything. So please remember about this. Some people say that if we're asked for estimates, we should quit our jobs. I'm not that brave. I would say that it depends as a consultant, right? We can at least try to make it work and make everyone aware that this is actually a really tricky part. Not because we don't know what we are doing, because we know the technology, we know requirements, for example, but because external dependencies as well that we can't forecast. And we can't be basically taking this all into consideration. Another kind of sad thing, probably remember at the beginning, this example of development team, BAs, PMs, POs, marketing people, salespeople. We are working in a silos. Silos itself maybe are not too bad, but we basically frequently fail in cooperating because we don't know each other's goals. And guess what? The marketing person has a different goal than the development team, right? We are working the same company, so it should be that we have the same goal, right? We are selling the same application, we want our customers happy. But for instance, the development team sometimes is measured by the number of bugs, which has nothing in common with the measurement that the sales guys are basically responsible from, because they are measured, for instance, how many customers are convinced to buy our product, which actually doesn't match, right? We want to deliver quality and value, obviously. They want to deliver quality and value as well, but because we are measured in so different manner, we can't communicate, right? It's really hard. Sometimes marketing people don't understand why we want to validate our ideas with the customers, because it means that they need to show the unready application to the customer and have a lot of questions why the error just happened on the screen. And from their perspective, if they want to sell this, it's not professional to showing something that contains errors, right? So in one hand, we have our carving for having short feedback loop and showing our tool in progress to the customers to just validate the ideas and maybe discover those bugs. And the other hand, with the marketing people who would like to have this, beautiful Porsche to sell instead of something that throws errors constantly, right? So those kind of things also, if we sit together and actually say, okay, what are our goals, and agree that we have actually one common goal, but we are measured in different manner, help us to do stuff that may work for both of sides. So for instance, maybe we can, as a development team, have demo instance that is really well tested and doesn't contain the bugs, or basically is nice and smooth. Because it's demo, it also have uploaded the sample data. So if we need to show it to the customers, it's already pre-set up. So person from marketing don't have to worry about it. Because what sometimes is happening is okay, we are developing the tool, but data, not our responsibility. Configuration, deal with it. And it's then really hard to convince someone from the other side of your silo that basically it's actually working. Because what they see empty tool, not configured, without data that you can't click. So how I can even show it to the customer? The best way would be convincing someone from marketing actually to take technology person with them. Again, why it's not easy? Just imagine we have this bunch of people and one person, one customer. So we have 15 people from our vendor company and one customer. Customers will be scared and they will say, oh my goodness, I'm paying for all those people. So that's why sometimes we are not so involved in the selling process at the beginning, and sometimes we are not involved in the talking with the conversation with the customers, because we as a business just don't want to scare by bare numbers the customers. And this is actually a frequent problem in the companies. Okay. One of the last questions, shall we scale Agile or not? Probably you can guess my opinion about that, but I will let you think about it on your own time and basically figure out the answer. And try what's the message basically over here? Let's try make something that actually suits the organization. If it's Agile, fine. If it's something that brings some steps from Agile, that's fine as well. Really In order to deliver value, we don't have to be like 100% pure agile. Probably it's not really fashionable what I'm saying right now, but if we mix a bit and try to improve ourselves, it will help us. Again, if we have constraints, if our organization is not agile because we have this bunch of people who are not really willing to work in agile manner, also maybe adapting few small steps will just help us in our cooperation and convincing them to maybe slightly change. Or if not, then at least we are like mindful of, okay, those are our constraints. We are not fully flexible, so we can also communicate to our business, sorry guys, because you are not flexible, we also can't be that much flexible, just take it into consideration. Because what, again, is sometimes happening, if we are like working agile and we are super flexible, and on the other hand, we have project plan with scope, and someone asks us for changing the scope, we are changing it and we are delivering, and the timelines is growing, then it's our fault. Because we have scope creep and we didn't manage it properly. So we need to decide, do we want to be flexible or do we believe in scope creep? Those are like two things that are not really matching, and sometimes if we don't communicate it clearly, we are just accused from this kind of things. It's a really sad corporate thing. Hopefully together after this talk we will have the ideas how to fight it a bit. Okay, so quickly let's wrap up. If we want to be agile and we just buy the tool and implement Scrum, it doesn't mean that we are agile. Agile is a philosophy. If we want to bring a bit of predictability to our business and a bit of like security for ourselves, let's have automated tests that can be read by the business people, so Cucumber, for instance, or any other framework that allows this. Again, because if we have tool that will grow older in a time, then it's also easier to remember what it was all about. Again, try to talk. If you can't talk, basically at least assess with your silos what are their goals in order to see the bigger picture as well. Because if we don't see bigger pictures, it's really hard to deliver anything. So, what was this all about? Basically, try to find the root cause of the problems, not necessarily symptoms. Fixing tools, fixing processes, it's just basically trying to figure out the symptoms, not necessarily root cause. Root cause is silos. This is the reason why we have troubles. Root cause is not communicating. Root cause is having different goals. Root cause is sometimes as well having the basically ridiculous project plans. But this is driven from this kind of miscooperation that we are having in the companies. And actually, it's really, really hard to break them because this is how the work works. Okay. Then another thing, Excel-driven management. So if we are giving the numbers or t-shirt sizes, we need to be prepared that someone will put it to the Excel and produce the deadlines. If they were doing it, it's also not because they are that much evil. No, they want predictability. So that's why we need to try to convince them, instead of having this, chunk the product to smaller bits, have smaller time to market, have feedback loop, and if we need to fail, just fail after first 2 weeks or first month, not after a year or not after 5 years of development. So this is what we should be mindful of. If we have first step for the iteration, it's like good progress, but let's try to figure it out how we actually can amend it in the manner that we don't have like project plans with guesstimates. Just be mindful of that users always will want more. And it's also not easy to cooperate within those all things if we have silos and don't understand each other and even don't try to understand. Again, basically, success of our product or our project not necessarily depends on the methodology. The current myth is if you are agile, you will succeed. Unfortunately, no. You can be really flexible. You can have all the artifacts of agile and not really following the philosophy because the communication is failing, because basically you are more focused on the, like, for instance, contracts and signing off than actually delivering value to the customers. You can be more focused on having, like, I don't know, written documentation rather than actual product. There is like so many things that actually can fail even though you have the Scrum, even though you have the iterations, even though you have retrospective. So remember about actually thinking like in the bigger idea of the product itself, how to deliver it, not necessarily about the methodology, because this you can figure it out, you can tweak it, you can adapt it, and you can make it working. So, thank you for your attention. This is in a nutshell communication in a project. Do you have any questions? We have like 2 minutes left. If not, then thank you. Oh, okay, there's one. Yeah.
Fixed price quoting on software, what would be the biggest downfall that you see occurring in not knowing the price?
Could you repeat, please, a bit louder because it's hard to hear.
Fixed price quoting on app development, so
Yeah.
providing an app with a fixed price.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest downfall or the most common reason that price is never actually met?
So first of all, requirements, I need to say, because if we have fixed price for certain requirements, it's really hard to basically decide what the customers really wants. And what we're actually having in this manner usually is like, okay, just write down this upfront, maybe design it upfront, then it's fixed price, we should deliver this, and that's done and dusted. But then we have sudden roadblocks that we haven't thought about. Again, it could be dependencies, it would be like whatever, or it could be simply change of mind of the customer. Again, this just ends up to the like validating ideas. Really frequently, we just start developing software without even like thinking about prototype. By prototype, I mean mock-up on paper or mock-up in the tool that actually doesn't look like software, to actually even see if it's making sense or not. Again, fixed price usually I see in the kind of big products when the companies are not certain about, okay, I want this, but I want to be secure that I won't pay more for delivering my business needs, so I will force the vendor to put it on the fixed price. So unfortunately, uncertainty usually is the reason why it's really hard to have fixed price. If we have existing software already and we are having like change requests, it's easier. If we have again existing software and we are adding features and we are working in well-established business that it's not influenced by the environment around, again, maybe it's possible. Probably, the thing is, the context around us, the business, how it's changing, the innovation that is happening around the world, not only in our technology space, but also in all other industries. It's also really hard to forecast, and what's sometimes happening that someone requests something for the fixed price and then something happens and we just discover that actually it's not the thing that we need. So yeah. Yes?
One way you may be able to do it is have a conversation with the product owner or the person who's hiring you and say, for the fixed price you get 10 sprints.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, and then sort of work with them to build up the feature set.
Yeah, you can do it that way, but usually, so my approach to basically breaking down the budgets and stuff is, okay, let's have 3 months time box. Whatever we deliver within 3 months, it's just delivered. We are working and cooperating really closely with business. Business is actually committed to see and assess the features that we are delivering to see if we are going in good direction or bad. Sometimes it's really hard, but then after 3 months, if we are happy and we deployed our POC to our end customers, so our end users, then we can continue investment for another 3 months doing the same manner. I'm currently working in an environment that we are just given the idea and the business says, okay, this is the idea, this is what we need, just figure it out the way. The end goal is, for instance, to calculate X, Y, and Z. How you will do it, what is the technology, what is the user journey, you are the experts, you had the UX people, you had the resource, just do your research, make it, and then we'll assess if it's actually a good idea or not. I would recommend this way of cooperating because it gives a lot of flexibility, but also it requires a lot of awareness of the technology team, because the technology team that is working on, it's also really, they had really good expertise in the business domain. And it's not always possible, again, because of the corporate constraints that they are there. So, yeah. But, yeah. Okay, so thank you for your attention. If you have any other questions, that's my Twitter handle. You can reach via Twitter. There is my blog as well, so you can read about the stuff I'm talking about. And if you have any additional queries, there is also email, so feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.